Captain Jake Morrison stood in the massive council chambers of Nexus Prime, watching history unfold before his eyes. The orbital station hung in the void between star systems, neutral ground where 847 different alien species had gathered to govern the galaxy for over 3,000 years. Today would be different. Today would be the day humanity said goodbye. The Zephyrian delegate floated above the central podium, its translucent blue form pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that Jake had learned to read over his 10 years of service. Anger. Dismissal. The alien was speaking in the common tongue, its voice carried by speakers throughout the vast chamber. The human species continues to show aggressive tendencies in their colonial expansion, the Zephyrian announced. Their terraforming methods destroy natural ecosystems. Their military buildup threatens peaceful neighbors. The Council has voted. Human colonies on Kepler 442b, Ross 128b, and Proxima Centauri c will be redistributed to more responsible species. Jake felt his jaw clench. Those worlds had been barren rocks when humans found them. Years of work, billions of credits, thousands of lives lost to accidents and equipment failures. Now the Council wanted to hand them over to the Keltorian Empire like gifts. Ambassador Lisa Carter stepped forward from the human delegation. She was a small woman with gray hair and sharp eyes that had seen too much politics. Her voice carried clearly through the chamber without amplification. The Earth government has reviewed the Council's decision, she said. We find it unacceptable. Humanity withdraws from all treaties with the Galactic Council effective immediately. We are recalling all human personnel from Council space within 72 hours. All diplomatic ties are hereby severed. The chamber erupted in sounds Jake could not translate. Clicks, chirps, harmonics, and subsonic rumbles from hundreds of different species. The Altarian Secretary General, a tall reptilian creature with golden scales, raised forearms for silence. Ambassador Carter, the Secretary General said, surely Earth does not mean to leave the protection of the Council. No species has survived alone in the galaxy for over 2 millennia. Pirates, rogue artificial intelligences, ancient defense systems, all manner of threats exist beyond our borders. Lisa Carter smiled coldly. Humanity thanks the Council for their concern. We decline your protection. Jake watched the alien delegates exchange glances, gestures, and signals. They thought this was a bluff. In their minds, humans were newcomers, primitives who had joined the galactic community only 50 years ago. They saw Earth as a backwater planet whose people made decent soldiers and engineers but lacked the wisdom of older civilizations. The Keltorian ambassador rose from his delegation. He was massive even by his species standards, with thick armor plating and tusks that curved down past his chin. When he spoke, his voice was like grinding stone. Let them leave, he rumbled. When the humans come crawling back in a few months begging for readmission, perhaps they will be more grateful for our guidance. Other delegates laughed or made sounds Jake assumed were laughter. The Vrex Consortium representative, an insectoid creature with multiple eyes, clacked its mandibles in what Jake knew was amusement. The criminal syndicates will feast on human shipping, the Vrex said. Without Council patrol routes, human colonies will be isolated and vulnerable. This is suicide. Ambassador Carter gathered her papers and headed for the exit. The human delegation followed, their boots echoing on the polished floor. Jake fell into step behind them, his hand resting unconsciously on his sidearm, old habits from his Marine days. As they walked through the corridors of Nexus Prime, Jake noticed how the alien staff members avoided looking at them. Some seemed nervous, others appeared relieved. A few watched with what he interpreted as curiosity. Ma'am, Jake said quietly as they reached the docking bay. Are we really doing this? Lisa Carter stopped and turned to face him. Captain Morrison, how long have you been stationed here? 10 years, ma'am, since the early days of our membership. In those 10 years, what have you observed about humanity's role in the Council? Jake thought carefully. We provide military support for peacekeeping operations. Our engineering teams maintain critical infrastructure. Human companies handle logistics for about 30% of galactic trade. Our scientists contribute to research projects. And what do we receive in return? Restricted colonial rights. Limited representation in Council votes. Technology sharing agreements that favor established species. Jake paused. They treat us like useful junior partners. Exactly. Carter resumed walking toward their transport. The Council sees us as servants, not equals. They've forgotten something important about humans. What's that, ma'am? We don't like being told what to do. The docking bay contained a single human vessel, the UES Defiance, Jake's ship. A heavy cruiser that looked primitive next to the elegant alien vessels in nearby berths. Human ships were built like hammers, all function and no style. The aliens often commented on how ugly they were. As Jake ran through pre-flight checks, he received a priority transmission from Earth Command. Admiral Patricia Wells appeared on his screen, her weathered face serious. Captain Morrison, you have new orders. All human assets in Council space are to be evacuated within 72 hours. Military vessels will provide escort for civilian transports. Any interference from Council forces is to be reported immediately, but not engaged unless fired upon first. Understood, Admiral. What about our people on deep space assignments? Already being recalled. Every human engineer, diplomat, scientist, and soldier. We're bringing everyone home. Jake looked at the evacuation schedule scrolling across his screen. Hundreds of ships, thousands of personnel. The logistics alone were staggering. Admiral, can I ask a question? Go ahead, Captain. Are we really ready for this? To go it alone? Admiral Wells smiled, and Jake saw something in her expression that surprised him. Confidence. Captain Morrison, humanity has been preparing for this day since we first set foot on Nexus Prime 50 years ago. We've learned everything we could from our alien friends. Now it's time to show them what we learned. The transmission ended. Jake stared at the blank screen for a moment, then began initiating departure procedures. Around him, his crew worked with quiet efficiency. They were nervous but determined. Like him, they had spent years taking orders from aliens who saw them as inferior. As the Defiance pulled away from Nexus Prime, Jake looked back at the massive station. It had been humanity's gateway to the galaxy, their introduction to wonders beyond imagination. Now it was just another alien structure in the darkness. He activated the ship's communication system and opened a channel to the human fleet gathering at the system's edge. All ships. This is Captain Morrison. We're going home. And we're going home free. Commander Ryan Torres guided his patrol ship through the empty space that once buzzed with human activity. 6 months had passed since Earth severed all ties with the Galactic Council, and the silence was becoming uncomfortable. The border sectors that had once seen regular human traffic now felt like a graveyard. His ship, the CSS Monitor, was a council vessel crewed by Altarians, Zephyrians, and a handful of other species. Ryan was one of the few humans who had chosen to remain in council service when the withdrawal happened. Most of his fellow humans thought he was crazy. Maybe they were right. Commander, his Altarian sensor operator called out, we're approaching the former human colony of New Brisbane. Still no response to our communication attempts. Ryan nodded. They had been trying to contact New Brisbane for 3 months. The colony had housed 50,000 humans and served as a major shipping hub for this sector. Now it was dark and silent. Take us in for a closer look, Ryan ordered. As they approached the planet, Ryan expected to see abandoned settlements and empty orbital platforms. Instead, he found something that made his blood run cold. The colony was gone. Not destroyed or evacuated. Gone. Where cities had once sprawled across 3 continents, there was now virgin wilderness. The orbital stations had vanished without leaving debris. Even the altered atmosphere that human terraforming had created was returning to its original composition. How is this possible? His second-in-command, a Keltorian named Vextalk, rumbled in confusion. Ryan had no answer. Humans did not have technology that could erase colonies so completely. At least they had not had such technology 6 months ago. 3 sectors away, Dr. Elena Rodriguez worked in a facility that officially did not exist. Deep beneath the surface of Earth's moon, she supervised teams of scientists and engineers who had been preparing for this day for decades. The withdrawal from the Galactic Council was not a desperate gamble. It was the culmination of 50 years of careful planning. Doctor, the quantum field generators are operating at full capacity, her assistant reported. All human settlements in former council space have been successfully relocated. Elena nodded, checking the displays that showed the progress of humanity's greatest project. While the council had seen humans as useful but primitive partners, Earth had been developing technologies that made alien science look quaint. Matter transporters that could move entire cities, cloaking systems that bent space-time itself, automated defense networks that learned and adapted faster than any biological intelligence. What about the observer stations? Elena asked. All active and monitoring council space. The economic disruption is proceeding according to models. Elena smiled grimly. The council had never realized how deeply integrated humans had become in galactic commerce. Human logistics companies moved goods between star systems. Human engineers maintained critical infrastructure. Human scientists provided breakthrough technologies that kept the galactic economy functioning. Now all of that was gone, and the effects were beginning to show. On the trading world of Kepler Station, merchant Prince Jelvar of the Meridian Collective watched his empire crumble. The insectoid being had built his fortune on contracts with human freight companies. They had been reliable, efficient, and surprisingly innovative in solving transportation problems. When the humans withdrew, they had taken their ships and their expertise with them. The quarterly reports are in, his assistant informed him. Shipping costs have increased by 300%. Delivery times have doubled. 6 major clients have canceled their contracts. Jelvar's compound eyes reflected the financial data scrolling across his screens. The numbers were devastating. Without human logistics support, the Meridian Collective was hemorrhaging money and reputation. Contact the other trading houses, he ordered. We need to discuss emergency measures. But the other trading houses were facing similar problems. The Altarian Republic's mining operations had ground to a halt without human-built extraction equipment. The Zephyrian research institutes were struggling to maintain their laboratories without human technical support. Even the mighty Keltorian military was discovering that their weapon systems required human-manufactured components that were no longer available. Back in Council space, Commander Ryan Torres received new orders from the Nexus Prime Command Center. The Galactic Council was becoming concerned about the economic disruption. Several member species were requesting emergency aid to deal with supply chain failures. All available ships are to conduct reconnaissance missions in former human territories. The orders read,
Gather intelligence on human activities and capabilities.
Use extreme caution. Ryan shared the orders with his crew. His Zephyrian communications officer pulsed nervously. Commander, perhaps this is unwise. If the humans wish to remain isolated, should we not respect their decision? Ryan looked at the aliens' bioluminescent patterns and recognized fear. The Zephyrians were among the most peaceful species in the galaxy. They had always admired human ingenuity while being puzzled by human aggression. Orders are orders, Ryan replied. But privately he wondered if his superiors knew what they were doing. The CSS monitor crossed into what had been designated as neutral space, the buffer zone between Council territory and human space. Ryan expected to find empty star systems and abandoned outposts. Instead, his sensors detected something that should have been impossible. Commander, his sensor operator reported, I'm reading massive energy signatures throughout this sector, artificial structures of unknown configuration. The main screen displayed a tactical overview that made Ryan's hands shake. Dozens of stations, each the size of a small moon, positioned at strategic points throughout the sector. They were sleek, advanced, and completely unlike any human technology the Council had ever catalogued. Are they responding to our presence? Ryan asked. Negative, Commander. They appear to be dormant. Ryan ordered a course toward the nearest station. As they approached, his communications officer suddenly straightened in alarm. Commander, we're receiving a transmission. Audio only. A human voice filled the bridge. Female, calm, professional. Council vessel, CSS monitor. You are entering restricted space. This is your only warning. Reverse course immediately or face the consequences. Ryan recognized the voice. Ambassador Helen Wright, who was supposed to have evacuated with the other human diplomats 6 months ago. This is Commander Ryan Torres of the Galactic Council. Ambassador Wright, we are conducting a routine reconnaissance mission in neutral space. There is no neutral space here, Commander. This is human territory now. You have 10 seconds to begin your turn. Ryan looked at his tactical display. The nearest station was still showing as dormant, but energy readings were beginning to spike. Ambassador, I have orders to gather intelligence on human activities in this region. 5 seconds. Commander, the station suddenly blazed with energy, and Ryan's ship was caught in a tractor beam that made his engines useless. But instead of being destroyed, they were gently turned around and pushed back toward Council space. Consider this a professional courtesy, Ryan, Helen Wright's voice said. You chose to stay with the Council, and I respect that choice. But do not test human patience again. The CSS monitor found itself deposited at the edge of Council space, with all systems intact, but completely helpless. Ryan stared at his instruments, trying to comprehend what had just happened. The humans had technology that could overpower a Council warship without firing a shot. As they limped back to Nexus Prime, Ryan composed his report. The Council had assumed that humanity would come crawling back within months, desperate for protection and trade agreements. Instead, humans had revealed capabilities that made the Council's technology look primitive. In his private quarters, Ryan opened a secure channel to Earth. He had maintained the contact despite his official loyalty to the Council. Old friendships died hard. "Elena, it's Ryan. We need to talk." Dr. Elena Rodriguez appeared on his screen, looking older and more tired than he remembered. "Hello? Ryan. I assume you've seen our new installations?" "Elena, what have you people done? Those stations, that technology, it's impossible." "Is it? We had 50 years to study Council science, Ryan. 50 years to improve on it, adapt it, make it better. Did you really think we were just sitting in meetings and taking notes?" Ryan rubbed his temples. "The Council is going to demand explanations." "They're scared, Elena." "Good. They should be scared. They treated us like children for 5 decades, Ryan. Now they're about to learn what humanity is really capable of." Captain Steve Parker commanded the largest investigation fleet the Galactic Council had ever assembled. 1 year after humanity's withdrawal, the galaxy was falling apart and the Council needed answers. His flagship, the Nexus Sword, led a formation of 200 vessels representing 30 different species. Their mission was simple: probe human space, gather intelligence, and determine what threat humanity posed to galactic stability. What they found defied every expectation. "Captain," his Altarian science officer reported, "the perimeter of human space is completely enclosed by a defensive network. I count over 3,000 stations, each broadcasting warning signals in 17 languages." Steve studied the tactical display. The stations formed an impenetrable wall around what had once been scattered human colonies. They were massive, clearly automated, and unlike anything in the Council's technology database. "Try to establish communication with one of the stations," Steve ordered. A pleasant human voice responded immediately. "Council Fleet Designation Nexus Sword. You are approaching the Terran Administrative Zone. Entry is prohibited to all vessels of the former Galactic Council. Please reverse course within 60 seconds. This is Captain Steve Parker, of the Galactic Council Investigation Fleet. We are on a diplomatic mission to establish contact with Earth. Government. No diplomatic contact is authorized at this time. Please reverse course within 30 seconds. Steve's Keltorian tactical officer, a scarred veteran named Grextam, growled from his station. "Captain, recommend we test their defenses. These cannot be as advanced as they appear." 15 seconds, the automated voice announced. Steve made a decision that would haunt him for the rest of his career. "All ships maintain position. They're bluffing." The nearest station fired a single beam of coherent energy that lasted exactly 1 microsecond. The beam passed through the Nexus Sword shields as if they did not exist, vaporized 3 meters of armor plating, and carved a precise hole through 17 decks without touching a single crew member. "Time expired," the automated voice announced. "Demonstration complete. Please reverse course immediately." Steve stared at the perfect circular hole that had appeared in his bridge's deck plating. The edges were smooth as glass, still glowing with residual heat. If the humans had wanted to destroy his ship, they could have done so effortlessly. "All ships, withdraw to minimum safe distance," he ordered. As the Council fleet retreated, Steve composed an urgent message to Nexus Prime. The humans had not just withdrawn from galactic society. They had built something entirely new, something that made Council technology look like stone tools. 3 sectors away, the Meridian Trade Collective was tearing itself apart. The massive commercial alliance had depended on human logistics companies for over 30 years. Without them, member species could not move goods efficiently between star systems. Chairman Velthera of the Altarian Republic stood before an emergency session of the Meridian Council. Her golden scales had dulled with stress, and her voice carried the weight of impending disaster. "The financial reports are clear," she announced. "Without human freight services, our trade routes are operating at 20% efficiency. 6 member species have already withdrawn from the collective. 3 more are threatening to leave within the month." The insectoid representative from the Zephyr Nebula Consortium clicked his mandibles angrily. "This is impossible. One primitive species cannot be so critical to galactic commerce. They were never primitive, Velthera replied. We chose to see them that way because it made us comfortable. Human companies handled the difficult routes, the dangerous cargo, the impossible schedules that kept our economy functioning. We dismissed them as useful laborers and never asked how they were so successful. On the neutral world of Karis 7th, Ambassador Helen Wright emerged from a year of hiding to broadcast a message that would be heard across the galaxy. She stood in a simple room wearing civilian clothes instead of her diplomatic uniform. Citizens of the galaxy, she began, 1 year ago, Earth withdrew from the Galactic Council after decades of discrimination and exploitation. The Council assumed humanity needed their protection and guidance. Today I address a galaxy in chaos to correct that assumption. The broadcast reached every major world in Council space, despite attempts to block it. Helen's words were calm but cutting. For 50 years, human engineers maintained the ancient automated defense systems that protect this galaxy from external threats. Human logistics companies moved the goods that kept your economies functioning. Human scientists provided the innovations that advanced your technology. The Council saw us as junior partners, useful servants who should be grateful for the privilege of membership. On Nexus Prime, Secretary General Vextar of the Altarian Republic watched the broadcast with growing horror. Around the galaxy, ancient defense systems that had protected trade routes for millennia were beginning to malfunction. Without human maintenance crews providing regular updates and repairs, the automated guardians were reverting to their original programming. Helen Wright continued her broadcast. Those ancient defense systems were designed to protect the galaxy from invasion. Without human oversight, they are returning to their default settings. Any ship they do not recognize as friendly will be classified as a threat and destroyed. The implications hit the galaxy like a shockwave. Trade routes that had been safe for centuries suddenly became death traps. Merchant vessels found themselves under attack by their own protective systems. The automated guardians that had once shepherded commerce now saw every ship as an enemy. Major Kevin Hayes commanded the defense of New Geneva, the last human colony still operating in Council space. The world had been scheduled for evacuation, but Council forces had blockaded the system in an attempt to seize human assets. Sir, his communications officer reported, Council fleet is demanding our surrender. They claim authority to confiscate all human property as compensation for economic damages. Kevin looked at the tactical display. 40 Council warships surrounded his small defensive force of 6 human frigates. By any conventional measure, they were hopelessly outnumbered. Send a response, Kevin ordered. Tell them we decline their generous offer. The lead Council ship, a massive Keltorian dreadnought, opened fire first. Kevin watched plasma bolts and particle beams converge on his flagship. The weapons passed harmlessly through his ship's shields, their energy absorbed and redirected by defensive systems the Council had never seen before. Return fire, Kevin ordered quietly. 6 human frigates engaged 40 Council warships in what military historians would later call the Battle of New Geneva. The engagement lasted 14 minutes. When it was over, 37 Council ships had been captured intact, their crews unharmed but bewildered. 3 ships had managed to retreat. Kevin opened a communication channel to the captured fleet commander, a Keltorian admiral whose tusks were quivering with shock. Admiral Krathek, your ships and crews will be returned unharmed to Council space. Consider this a demonstration of human restraint. We could have destroyed your entire fleet, but we chose not to. Remember that when you file your report. As the surviving Council ships limped back to Nexus Prime, they carried news that would shake the foundations of galactic civilization. Human military technology was not just advanced. It was revolutionary. The species the Council had dismissed as primitive warriors had developed weapons and defenses that made their own fleets obsolete. On Earth, President William Grant received reports from observers throughout the galaxy. The plan was working perfectly. Humanity had spent 50 years studying galactic civilization, learning its weaknesses, and preparing for this moment. Madam Secretary, he said to his defense minister, Janet Coleman, what's the status of the economic disruption? Galactic trade is down 60% and falling. The Meridian Collective has lost half its members. The Altarian Republic is requesting emergency aid. Even the Keltorian Empire is experiencing supply shortages. Grant nodded. And the Council's response? Panic. 6 species have withdrawn from Council membership in the past month. The remaining members are forming competing factions. Some want to negotiate with us, others want to mobilize for war. Grant looked out at the Earth's restored skyline. The withdrawal from galactic society had been costly in the short term, but humanity was stronger now than ever before. They had traded dependence on alien technology for self-sufficiency. They had exchanged the illusion of galactic friendship for the reality of human strength. How long before complete collapse? He asked. At current rates, the Galactic Council as a functioning government will cease to exist within 2 years. Individual species may survive, but their ability to act collectively is already compromised. Grant smiled. The galaxy had taught humanity many things during their 50 years of membership. The most important lesson was that civilizations built on the assumption of superiority were inherently fragile. When their assumptions were challenged, they crumbled. Soon it would be time for humanity to offer the galaxy a new form of government. One where humans would not be junior partners or useful servants. One where Earth would lead and others would follow. Colonel Dan Foster stood in the command center of New Montana, humanity's fortress world on the edge of former Council space. 2 years had passed since Earth's withdrawal and the galaxy was dying. His screen showed the collapse in real time, refugee fleets numbering in the billions, trade routes abandoned to pirates and malfunctioning defense systems, and former allies now locked in bitter warfare. "Sir," his intelligence officer reported, "we're receiving another emergency communication from the Altarian Republic. They're requesting immediate humanitarian aid." Dan looked at the message scrolling across his screen. The Altarian Republic, once the most stable government in the galaxy, was facing complete economic collapse. Their mining operations had failed without human equipment. Their shipping networks had crumbled without human logistics support. Now they were begging for help from the species they had dismissed as primitive just 2 years earlier. "File it with the others," Dan ordered. In the past month alone, they had received similar requests from 47 different species and political entities. All were desperate. All were ignored. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council was holding what most observers believed would be its final session. Secretary General Vexitar of the Altarian Republic stood before a chamber that was less than half full. Many species had simply stopped sending delegates. Others had withdrawn from the council entirely. "The situation is critical," Vexitar announced, her golden scales dim with exhaustion. "The Nexus Core communication system suffered a catastrophic failure 12 hours ago. We have lost contact with 17 sectors. The economic damage is now estimated at over 4 trillion galactic credits." The Nexus Core had been the galaxy's central nervous system for over 2,000 years, handling communications between star systems and enabling the complex trade networks that kept civilization functioning. Its failure was not an accident. The system had been jointly maintained by multiple species, but humans had provided the quantum encryption protocols that kept it stable. Without regular updates from human technicians, the entire network had collapsed in a cascade of failures. Admiral Krathek of the Keltorian Empire rose from his delegation, his massive form intimidating even in defeat. The Battle of New Geneva had broken his fleet and his confidence, but not his pride. "Enough of this weakness," he growled. "The humans think they can destroy galactic civilization and face no consequences. I propose immediate military action. We mobilize every available ship and break their defensive perimeter. Force them back to the negotiating table." Several delegates voiced agreement, but Vexitar raised her arms for silence. "Admiral, need I remind you that your fleet was defeated by 6 human frigates? Our combined military forces have proven inadequate against human technology. Then we build more ships. We develop new weapons. We do whatever is necessary to bring the humans to heel." The Zephyrian delegate pulsed with agitation. "And what if we fail? What if we provoke them into aggressive action? The economic collapse is devastating, but it is not extinction. A war with humanity might be." The debate continued for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. The council was too fractured, too weakened, too desperate to mount an effective response to humanity's demonstration of power. They could only watch as their civilization crumbled around them. Dr. Sophie Bennett worked in Earth's Deep Space Monitoring Center, tracking the galaxy's descent into chaos through a network of automated probes. The data was overwhelming. Entire sectors cut off from communication, refugee crises that dwarfed anything in recorded history, and former allies now engaged in resource wars. "The Keltorian Empire and the Zephyrian Collective are in open conflict," she reported to her supervisors. Fighting started when Zephyrian refugees attempted to settle in Keltorian space without permission. Estimated casualties are in the millions. Her supervisor, Director Mike Turner, studied the tactical displays with professional interest. What about the Meridian Trade Collective? Completely collapsed. 6 major species have formed independent trade alliances, but none of them trust each other. Commerce between their territories has virtually ceased. Mike nodded grimly. The collapse was proceeding even faster than their models had predicted. 50 years of careful study had taught humanity that galactic civilization was held together by mutual dependence and shared institutions. Remove those foundations and the entire structure would fall apart. Any signs of adaptation? Species learning to function without human support? Sophie shook her head. They're trying, but the learning curve is too steep. The Altarians are attempting to restart their mining operations using pre-human technology. Efficiency is down 90%. The Vrex Consortium is trying to maintain their criminal networks without human-manufactured weapons. They're losing territory to smaller but better-equipped rivals. On the former Council world of Kara 7, Ambassador Helen Wright broadcast her second galactic address. She looked older now, worn down by the weight of watching a civilization destroy itself. 2 years ago, she began, Earth offered the Galactic Council a choice: accept humanity as an equal partner, or learn to function without us. The Council chose poorly, and now the galaxy pays the price. Her words reached the scattered remnants of galactic civilization through quantum transmitters that only humans still knew how to maintain. On refugee ships in failing colonies and the halls of crumbling governments, billions of beings listened to the human woman who had become the voice of their downfall. The collapse you are witnessing is not the result of human malice, Helen continued. It is the natural consequence of a system built on false assumptions. You assumed humanity needed your protection. You assumed we were grateful for your patronizing guidance. You assumed we would accept subordination indefinitely. In the Keltorian Military Command Center on Thexara Prime, General Thexanar studied the intelligence reports from the human border with growing desperation. The Keltorian Empire had been the galaxy's premier military power for over 1,000 years. Now they could not even protect their own colonies from pirate raids. General, his aide reported, the refugee crisis has reached critical levels. We have over 2 billion displaced persons from failed colonies requesting settlement rights. Our resources cannot support them. Thexanar's tusks ground together in frustration. The Keltorian military had always been efficient because they relied on human logistics networks to supply their forces and human engineers to maintain their equipment. Without that support, their mighty war machine was grinding to a halt. What about our request for military aid from Earth? No response, sir. The humans have maintained complete communication silence for 18 months. Thexanar made a decision that would have been unthinkable 3 years earlier. The proud Keltorian Empire would have to beg. Prepare a fleet. We're going to Sol System. Back on New Montana, Colonel Dan Foster received the alert he had been expecting. Long-range sensors detected a massive fleet moving toward human space. The combined might of what remained of the Galactic Council, led by Keltorian dreadnoughts and supported by ships from dozens of desperate species. Sir, his tactical officer reported, Council fleet comprises approximately 800 vessels. They're broadcasting on all frequencies, requesting immediate negotiations with Earth government. Dan opened a secure channel to Earth Command. Admiral Patricia Wells appeared on his screen, looking as calm as ever despite the approaching crisis. Admiral, the Council fleet will reach our defensive perimeter in 6 hours. Are we proceeding with the demonstration? Affirmative, Colonel. Phase 4 of the plan is authorized. It's time to show them the full extent of human capabilities. Dan felt a mixture of anticipation and regret. The approaching battle would not be a battle at all. It would be a massacre, carefully choreographed to break the Council's will to resist permanently. Admiral, he said quietly, there are good people in that fleet, beings who genuinely tried to work with humanity during our time in the Council. I know, Dan, but sometimes good people make bad choices. The Council had 50 years to treat humanity as equals. They chose to see us as useful servants instead. Now they face the consequences. As the Council fleet approached human space, refugees throughout the galaxy watched and waited. Some hoped for human victory, believing that only Earth could restore order to the chaos. Others prayed for the Council's success, fearing that human dominance would be even worse than the current collapse. Captain Rachel Stone commanded the forward scout ships monitoring the Council fleet's approach. Her small squadron of human vessels shadowed the massive alien armada, gathering intelligence and updating tactical assessments. "Captain," her sensor operator reported, "the Council fleet is broadcasting surrender terms. They're offering complete autonomy for human space in exchange for renewed cooperation." Rachel smiled coldly. "Too little, too late. They're not offering us equality. They're offering us the same patronizing partnership that led to this mess. The die had been cast 2 years ago, when humanity walked away from the Galactic Council. There could be no going back now. The galaxy would learn that underestimating humanity had consequences, and those consequences would reshape the balance of power among the stars forever." Admiral Chris Taylor stood on the bridge of the UES Sovereign, watching the largest fleet in galactic history approach human space. 800 ships representing the last desperate hope of the Galactic Council stretched across his tactical display like a broken constellation. They had come to force humanity back to the negotiating table. They would leave understanding why that was impossible. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "Lead Council ship is broadcasting surrender terms. They offer complete recognition of human territorial claims in exchange for renewed cooperation." Chris studied the fleet composition. Keltorian dreadnoughts formed the backbone, their massive hulls bristling with weapons that had once seemed impressive. Altarian science vessels provided sensor support. Zephyrian carriers launched fighter squadrons in elaborate formations. It was the combined military might of dozens of species assembled in humanity's honor. "Decline their offer," Chris ordered. "Begin the demonstration." The battle for Sol system began at 1432 Galactic Standard Time. It ended at 1849 the same day. In 4 hours and 17 minutes, human forces systematically dismantled the largest fleet ever assembled, capturing or disabling every enemy vessel while suffering 0 casualties. The Council had expected a fight. They had prepared for losses. What they experienced instead was a lesson in the difference between technology and engineering, between knowing how something works and understanding why it works that way. Human ships moved through space like living things, their hulls shifting and adapting to incoming fire. Council weapons that should have penetrated armor instead found themselves absorbed and redirected back at their sources. The ancient defensive systems that had protected the galaxy for millennia suddenly turned on their former masters, recognizing only human ships as friendly. General Thexnar of the Keltorian Empire watched from his flagship as human frigates carved through his battle lines like knives through cloth. His massive dreadnought, pride of the Keltorian fleet, found itself wrapped in energy fields that made its weapons useless and its engines powerless. "How?" he growled as his ship was gently towed toward a human capture vessel. "How do they possess such technology?" Admiral Chris Taylor answered that question in his broadcast to the captured fleet. "For 50 years you allowed humans into your most secure facilities. We maintained your defense networks. We built your transportation systems. We solved your engineering problems. Did you think we were just following instructions?" The truth was devastating in its simplicity. While the Council had seen humans as useful servants, humanity had been conducting the most comprehensive intelligence operation in galactic history. Every human engineer had been an observer. Every human scientist had been learning not just what alien technology could do, but how to improve it. "We studied your weapons and made them more efficient," Chris continued. "We analyzed your defenses and found their weaknesses. We learned from your mistakes and avoided repeating them. You taught us everything we needed to know to surpass you." On the bridge of his captured flagship, General Thexnar listened to the human admiral with the dawning horror of complete understanding. The humans had not stolen alien technology. They had perfected it. 3 days after the battle, Captain Amy Roberts commanded the first human relief mission to enter the war-torn Meridian sector. Her fleet of hospital ships and cargo transports carried food, medicine, and hope to billions of refugees who had been forgotten by their own governments. "Captain," her medical officer reported, "we're receiving thousands of distress calls from refugee camps throughout the sector. Estimated casualties from starvation and disease are approaching critical levels." Amy studied the tactical display showing the scattered remains of what had once been a thriving interstellar civilization. The Meridian sector had been one of the galaxy's most prosperous regions before the collapse. Now it was a graveyard of failed colonies and abandoned worlds. Begin emergency aid distribution, she ordered. Standard humanitarian protocols, but make sure everyone understands these supplies come from Earth. The relief mission was not entirely altruistic. Humanity was making a point. The same species that had just destroyed the Council's fleet was now providing aid to its victims. The message was clear. Resist humanity and face destruction. Accept human leadership and receive protection. On the neutral world of Carissa 7, Ambassador Helen Wright prepared for her final broadcast to the galaxy. The war was over, the old order had collapsed, and a new age was about to begin. Citizens of the galaxy, she began, the Galactic Council has formally surrendered to Earth government. The old system of patronizing, superiority, and hidden discrimination has ended, forever. Her words reached every inhabited world through quantum transmitters that humans had quietly installed throughout the galaxy during their years of Council membership. The network had been disguised as routine communication upgrades, but it gave humanity control over galactic information flow. Earth offers a new form of government, Helen continued. The Terran Administrative Zone will provide security, economic stability, and fair treatment to all species willing to accept human authority. Those who prefer independence may withdraw to their home systems, but they will receive no support from the new administration. The choice was stark but simple. Join humanity's new order or face the chaos alone, Ambassador. Felthara of the Altarian Republic was among the first to formally request membership in the Terran Administrative Zone. The proud species that had once been equals in the Galactic Council now petitioned Earth for the privilege of becoming junior partners in a human-led government. We accept human authority, she announced to her people. The alternative is extinction. Other species quickly followed. The Zephyrian Collective, the Vrex Consortium, and dozens of smaller civilizations formally requested protection under human authority. A few proud species, led by the remnants of the Keltorian Empire, chose isolation instead. President William Grant received the surrender documents in the restored United Nations Building on Earth, Secretary General. Vextar of the former Galactic Council signed with hands that shook from exhaustion and defeat. The terms are non-negotiable, Grant informed her. Complete reorganization of galactic government under human authority. Recognition of human territorial claims throughout the galaxy. Establishment of Earth as the capital world of the new Terran Administrative Zone. Vextar's golden scales had faded to bronze with stress. And in return, peace, prosperity, protection. The same things you promised humanity 50 years ago, except this time we will deliver them. The transition was remarkably swift. Within 6 months, human administrators had restored order to the major trade routes. Ancient defense systems that had turned hostile during the collapse were brought back online under human control. The refugee crises that had seemed insurmountable began to resolve as human logistics networks efficiently relocated displaced populations. 5 years after the withdrawal, Commander Lisa Davis patrolled the peaceful trade routes of the human administrative zone in her ship, the UES Guardian. The galaxy was more prosperous than it had ever been, but under very different management. Commander, her communications officer reported, we're receiving a distress call from the edge of the administrative zone. Unknown vessels are attacking a merchant convoy. Lisa smiled grimly. Pirates had become extinct in human space, but a few criminal organizations still operated in the independent sectors beyond human authority. Set intercourse for the distress signal, she ordered. Let's remind these pirates why crime doesn't pay in the new galaxy. The UES Guardian arrived to find 3 pirate vessels attacking a convoy of Altarian merchants. The pirates had expected easy prey. Instead, they found themselves facing weapons technology that made their ships look like antiques. Pirate vessels, Lisa broadcast. You are in violation of Terran administrative law. Surrender immediately or face the consequences. The lead pirate ship responded with weapons fire. Lisa's ship absorbed the attack and returned fire with a single precisely aimed shot that disabled the pirates' engines without harming the crew. This is your final warning, she announced. The remaining pirates surrendered immediately. As Lisa supervised the arrest of the pirate crews, her sensor officer detected something interesting on long-range scanners. Commander, I'm picking up artificial signals from beyond the galactic rim. The pattern suggests an attempt at communication. Lisa felt a familiar thrill of anticipation. Analysis? It appears to be a first contact protocol from an external galaxy. They're requesting diplomatic meetings. Lisa opened a secure channel to Earth Command. President Grant himself appeared on her screen, looking older but still sharp. "Mr. President," she reported, "we have contact with an external civilization. Initial signals suggest they're requesting formal diplomatic relations." Grant smiled with satisfaction. "Excellent, Commander. Begin standard first contact procedures, and Lisa, make sure they understand from the beginning that they're dealing with the Terran Administrative Zone. We've learned from our mistakes with the old Galactic Council. As the UES Guardian, set course for humanity's first contact with an extragalactic civilization." Lisa reflected on how much had changed. 50 years ago, humans had been junior partners in a galactic community that saw them as useful but inferior.